Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Psychological Evaluation of Serial Killers series. Tonight, we're going to be covering Charles Manson. I'm sure most people know who Charles Manson is, but for those who don't, Charles Manson was a cult leader and a mastermind behind a series of gruesome murders carried out by his followers, known as the Manson family, in the late 1960s. He was born on November 12, 1934. Manson became infamous for his charismatic yet manipulative personality and his ability to control those around him. Manson died on November 19, 2017, while serving a life sentence for his role in the murders. Now, I have an episode of my serial killer series that I did on Manson, and it is very, very detailed biography of his life. So if you want a whole life story, find that on the channel and check it out. It is very, very good. But this is the psychological evaluation of Charles Manson. And while I cannot conduct a direct psychological evaluation, mental health professionals have examined Manson's case. And based on available information, here are some key points related to the psychological evaluation of Charles Manson. The first point is antisocial personality disorder. Manson exhibited traits consistent with antisocial personality disorder, characterized by a disregard for the rights of others, a lack of empathy, and a pattern of deceitful and manipulative behavior. His ability to influence and control his followers reflects these antisocial tendencies. The next point is cult leader and manipulator. Manson was a charismatic and manipulative cult leader who used psychological tactics to control his followers. He employed a mix of charm, intimidation, and mind control techniques to establish dominance over the Manson family, convincing them to commit violent acts on his behalf. He also used sex and drugs and rock and roll in order to sway the impressionable young followers. The next point is delusional beliefs. Manson harbored delusional beliefs and a distorted view of reality. He believed in an apocalyptic race war called Helter Skelter, at least according to Vincent Bugliosi, who was the prosecutor in the case. That's a theory that they went with. And he manipulated his followers into committing murders with the aim of sparking this perceived war. I tend to think that the Manson murders had nothing to do with Helter Skelter. I think it was a slight. You know, he was offended, and that dude didn't live there anymore. And I think it was more about that than it was Helter Skelter. I think they just wrote that. I think they just used that term because it was a Beatles song, and it was kind of a jab, you know. I get way more into that in the history show that I did on him. But if that is to be believed, the official motive, then that would show delusional beliefs. The next point is paranoia and grandiosity. Manson displayed paranoid tendencies, suspecting various individuals and groups of conspiring against him. At the same time, he exhibited grandiose beliefs about his own significance and role in societal transformation. Next point is a history of childhood trauma. Manson's troubled upbringing included experiences of neglect and abuse. He was raised in and out of correctional facilities, and he had a difficult childhood that likely contributed to the development of his antisocial behavior. I mean, he was famously raised in a prostitution house, you know, and he grew up kind of on the wrong side of the tracks, dealing with some really sketchy people and living on the streets, basically, living that street life. And then he was in and out of jails and prisons most of his life. So he definitely had a rough upbringing, and that might have contributed to the paranoid tendencies and that feeling of that grandiose feeling as well, because he wanted to believe that he was more than he was, because he had always been nothing. The next point is lack of empathy and remorse. Manson showed a complete lack of empathy for the victims of the murders committed by his followers. During his trial and subsequent interviews, he displayed a disturbing lack of remorse and took pride in the chaos and fear generated by the crimes. The next point is a connection to substance abuse. Manson's history included substance abuse, and he was known to use drugs, including LSD. Substance abuse can exacerbate existing mental health issues and may have played a role in shaping Manson's mindset and his behavior. He also, as I mentioned before, used drugs as a tool in order to seduce and woo his followers, to keep them loyal to him, and to keep them intoxicated so that he could appear more godlike to them. The next point is manipulation through fear and intimidation. Manson maintained control over his followers through fear, intimidation, and psychological manipulation. He created a dynamic where the individuals felt emotionally and physically dependent on him, fostering an environment conducive to carrying out his orders. And I've kind of already talked about how he did that through sex and drugs and music, and kind of kept them high, kept them happy, so that they would like him and want to be around him and want to stay. And then while they were really, really high, he would give these sermons of his views on things, where he was a godlike figure. And because they were so mentally cloudy from the drugs, that kind of started to set in on them, and they started to believe in it. Manson's case remains a subject of interest and study in psychology, criminology, and cult dynamics. Understanding the factors that led to his ability to manipulate and control others is essential in preventing the emergence of similar charismatic leaders who may pose a threat to society. There have been many of these type of leaders throughout history. Manson obviously wasn't the only one. You got Jim Jones, you got Hitler, you got a lot of people who were very charismatic and people followed, who ended up doing some pretty horrible things. So studying the case files of these types of cult leaders can give you a better understanding of how they operate and the step-by-step process that they go through to indoctrinate people and to get them to do what they want. So I think it's a very useful thing. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something. As always, up to you to make up your own mind. Let me know in the comments section what you think, and I will catch you on the next one. Until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do I. Bye-bye.